Welcome back to MVM. Today we have a Kickstarter preview. This one is for Miremarsh from Room 17. This is a exploration adventure game. You're going through sort of a swamplands or a marsh. You're goblins, and it has a little press your luck as well.
Yeah, I love these style games that have you representing the bad guys. There's not enough of these style games out there. So in this one, you're representing one of many goblins that are going to be competing within the game. You're exploring the swamp, doing challenges. Now, in the corners of this board, there is a final quest. So there's two ways to win the game or to lose the game. One is to complete the final challenge or the final quest by going to one of these locations and completing that challenge. The second way, and maybe sometimes the easier way, is to be the last goblin standing, because each player is going to start with a goblin in front of them. However, when you die, you're going to use one of the reserve goblins. And in a 4-player game, there's going to be 10 total goblins that could be used, 4 starting right at the beginning. I mean, there's 6 in the reserve. If you die, you lose everything that you have, and you're going to have to restart over trying to get to one of the corners of the board.
Right, and death will come for sure.
Absolutely.
This is not a game where you're not going to die. And in most cases, everyone's going to die at least once, because while this is basically flipping tiles and seeing what's in store, there is actually some cool things you can do to sort of scout things out to determine what you might be facing so that you can fend off death a little bit, but sometimes it's just not going to go your way.
So this is a prototype version of the game. The final game is going to have some really cool miniatures. Hopefully we'll throw them on the screen so you can see them. So the game board itself is going to have a lot of flipped over face down tiles with some starting locations in the center. These locations are usually stores that allow you to trade 2 of the main resources, which are bones, which are going to be acquired by killing very specific monsters, and also coin, again, from doing specific challenges. You're going to go back to those locations and level up your characters by getting more dice. Now, every player is going to start with a goblin, and right here at the very top, it shows you which colored die you're going to use. There are 4 different colored dice, and all of them have kind of a thematic representation behind them. You have your green dice, which is your kind of all around. They have combat, movement, some looking. Your white dice are kind of your scout dice. You have your black dice, which are your straight up hardcore combat dice. And then you have your mystical dice, which have some arcane symbols, which are wilds. And they also have the swamp monster, who's going to move around kind of the NPC and try to beat up other players within the game. Also, each player is going to have some possible starting stats. Everyone's going to have a special ability. However, some players may start with a spell, some players may start with pets, and so forth.
Yeah, for example, mine starts with a couple tokens, 1 money token and then the little dagger token, the dagger token is going to grant you an extra die. Throughout the game, you're going to actually be collecting things that might sort of amplify your dice pool from your starting pool to allow you to get into those 2s, 3s, and 4 tiles.
Each player is also going to have a couple slots across the bottom. It shows you how many of those special tiles you can hold. There's 4 different types of special tiles, like rope and daggers, mystic, arcane signs, and maps, and all of them refer to the dice. So the more of those symbols you have, the more dice you're going to be rolling within the game. Each player is also going to start with 9 fish. Now, at the end of every single one of your turns, you're going to have to expend or eat one of these fish. It's another way you can die. If you go through 9 turns and you are able to complete the final challenge, you're going to die. Any challenge that you don't complete in this game, you're going to die. So it's just as you said at the very beginning, you're going to die a lot in this game. It's all about trying to move fast and to push your luck through the course of the game.
Yeah, in terms of components, the only other thing I think we haven't talked about are the pets and spells cards. Jeremy might have mentioned that his character starts with a pet. That's possible. But there's spell cards as well. These things are going to be items that you might be able to collect throughout the game on certain tiles. At some of these stores, you're able to convert some coin into potentially buying a pet, buying an extra die, or buying a spell. These are basically going to be things that allow you to break or bend some of the rules at the very least.
The map contains a lot of face-down tiles. These are placed in very specific locations. You're going to see the number 1 up through the number 4. That shows you the progression of the difficulty of trying to complete the challenges on the other side of that. Also off to the very side, you're going to see layer tiles. Some of these tiles may just be straight up challenges. Some of them are going to have a green mossy border around them saying that they contain a monster. And you're going to take another tile and lay it on top. You have to complete and challenge that monster and kill it before you can progress to the main portion of that tile. Looking at the anatomy of a tile, some of these tiles are going to have just a straight up challenge or something that you get from starting your location on there. And some of them are going to have some degrees of challenges. There are both compulsory challenges, which are going to have a metal board across the top. This says that when you land on this tile, you have to complete this challenge. If you can't complete it, you die. And below them, sometimes you're going to see wooden planks. These are optional. You can actually go through 1 or 2 of them and stop and then start your next turn where you've progressed on that tile.
Yeah, and you'll notice if you get your way up to one of the 4 tiles, you'll notice all 3 of these are compulsory. So you have to do all of these when you land on and attempt it, or else, again, you die.
Right. So this is how the game works. On your turn, you're going to start in the starting location, which is the warrens, and you're simply going to roll your dice. When you roll your dice, you're going to look and see what you have on them. Now, you have the option of re-rolling these as many times as you wish, as long as you do not roll something that has the foot on it. If you roll a foot, you're done rolling for that round, typically. When you roll the foot, that just means you have movement points to be able to use. Everyone has the same number of movement, which is just simply determined by however many of these foot icons that you have on your dice. When you roll, you simply get to decide one of a multitude of different things. Do you wish to move using your feet? Do you wish to look at another tile? Some of these dice are going to have eyes on them. That means that you have 1 of 2 options when you use these. 1, you can look at a face down tile that you were adjacent to. Or 2, you could look at the top tile of the monsters that would go into those particular layers. So I could look at a level 1 monster in any of these locations. That kind of gives you an idea of what you could be up against if you decide to go to that tile, and it does hold a layer.
Yeah, a lot of those lair tiles are not going to have any challenges in and of themselves, but they will have that creature that comes out, which may have some compulsory action or challenges and some other things that you can go through. Once you do that, you're going to get all the rewards that you've passed, and you're usually going to slay that creature.
Right. When you decide to use your movement, you're simply going to expend 1 of your dice, and then you get to decide if you wish to do the challenge. Now again, if it's a compulsory challenge and it has that metal border behind it, you have to complete that challenge. But the great thing is, once you've moved to a location, you're allowed to re-roll your dice. So if you wish to try that specific challenge, you pick up the dice that you have not used, you roll them. But you have to use what you have at that point. And again, any challenge that you do not succeed at in this game, you die. And when you die, you lose all the items that you have.
Yeah, and it's cool because, like I said earlier, a lot of those challenges after the compulsory will give you some benefits. Once you get your dice pool up to a certain amount, you're going to be able to attempt those. And like Jeremy said, you can re-roll before each of those challenges. So if you're not getting what you need, you might be able to re-roll again. You don't have to do that, though. So if you have one great roll right off the bat, you might be able to get through all of the challenges on a tile.
Yeah, you do not have to re-roll. If you do have a great roll at the start, you can complete all of them on that given turn. And in fact, if you have more feet, you can keep progressing. That's the push your luck element of the game. But remember, you do have a time limit because you have 9 fish. At the end of your turn, if you want to stay on a tile and you've only progressed halfway down that challenge, you're going to have to end your turn by eating 1 of your fish, and you have 9 fish to eat. There's very few ways to get additional fish within the game.
Yeah, so theoretically, you need to be able to start the game, build yourself up to take on one of these level 4 tiles within those 9 fish. Now, there are some things that might happen in the game where you might be able to get a fish, things like that, but not many. There's nothing really built into the standard practices in order to replenish your fish.
If at any time that you do die, you do lose all your items, but the great thing is you're going to draw from the goblin stack. And that goblin stack is going to tell you which goblin you have. You're going to reintroduce that miniature to the game. You're going to start with all those starting dice and maybe a possible pet or new spell. But you're going to start with a blank slate right then. And remember, the more people that die, the smaller this deck becomes. If at any point you die and there's no more goblins to draw, you're out of the game. And this could be a last man standing scenario going on.
Yeah, absolutely. In our plays, we actually, that's what happened in most cases, because we started going through these goblins like they were disposable, which in fact they are.
Yeah.
But you've got to be really careful. You want to use those eyes to take a look at things. And in many cases, you might take a look at a tile and see that it's a lair. And before you move there, you might also want to take a look at the creature tile that might come out there so that you're completely and fully prepared.
Yeah. It really depends on the dice that you have, too. Again, the green dice are your all-around dice. If you're wanting to do a lot of combat or you encounter a tile that has combat, you want to find a way to be able to collect black dice because it has double swords on them. There's some locations that just straight up give you the token that allows you to have more black dice in your pool. There's also the mystic dice, which are very hard to get as well. There's a lot of blank sides of this dice, and they do have the creature movement or the swamp creature on it, but they do have 3 arcane symbols, meaning that they are wilds. They can be anything that you want, so you have some flexibility.
Yeah, so it really is a very fast game. This was going to take less than an hour. It's got a nice amount of push your luck, And unlike a lot of push-your-luck games, it has this feeling, obviously, of exploration that I haven't seen in a lot of dice-rolling push-your-luck games.
Not to mention, this art is fantastic. Once you start looking at the art, like the actual art of the goblins and the graphic design, the miniatures that we've seen, they look incredible. So that is Miremarsh. If you guys have any questions about the game, make them in the comments below. Subscribe to us, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, everything else that we do, and we will catch you guys next time.
Bye-bye.